everyone. Welcome to the Stone and Straw podcast. I'm your host, John Cullen. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Stone Straw Pod. As always, we are presented by CurlingZone, Hardline Curling, and Dynasty Curling. For those of you that like my intros short, you're going to be blessed this week because I'm absolutely exhausted. I just got finished with the mixed regional playdowns here in BC, and somehow Curl BC made a draw where 11 teams were in the draw. There were 8 draws, triple knockout. Somehow we had to play all 8. I have no idea how that is possible or how you can make a draw like that. We managed to do it. We qualified out of the C, but the team we beat in the C final, it was only their 6th game and it was our 8th. So that was kind of cool. But we did it. We won, and it was fun. I got to play with Sarah Daniels, the Canadian junior runner-up, and her teammate Sarah Loken, and Braden Carpenter, who's another young up-and-comer in BC, very, very good curler. And so the three of them are all 20, and I'm old. I'm 33, so some of you listening to this podcast will be like, oh my God, you're so young, shut up. And some of you listening to this podcast will be like, oh yeah, you're old. So we did it. But I am very sore and very tired, so I'd like to keep it quick. This week, my guest this week, Krista McCarville. I want to talk a little bit about the episode because the reason I brought Krista on is because she is admittedly a tier 2 curler. Now, she kind of bridges that gap. You know, obviously, she gets a lot of results for not playing that often, and so she sometimes will sneak her way into the tier 1 slam, like for example, the tier 1 that was in Thunder Bay, they were in that this year, and they're kind of one of those teams that is always thought of as a contender. They made the Olympic trials last year, but they had to go through the pre-trials. They, they're always in contention at the Scotties, but they just don't play that much, and that is by choice. So I was really curious because Krista's been a friend of mine for a while. She's an awesome lady, and I knew that this was just kind of the way that she felt. She has a full-time job. She just wants to be able to have family time, have a job, and still try and curl. And I think that this is a podcast that will be really inspiring for some people because I know that right now it's tough when you're in that kind of tier 2, tier 3 conversation to want to be able to move up the ranks. And, you know, you see the top teams that are borderline professional playing so often, and it just seems insurmountable sometimes. And so Krista walks me through taking some time off, having her kids, coming back to the game. And I just think it's super fascinating and inspiring for any curler that is in Krista's shoes and wants to, you know, still feel like they have hope that they can be competitive and play well and do the right things, even if they're not playing in 10 plus events every year and not playing in all the slams. And so that's what this episode is all about. Krista is an amazing person, an amazing curler. I know that you guys are going to really like this one, so I'm not going to waste any more time. You're welcome. Those of you that hate these intros, it's quick. It's Krista McCarville. This episode is brought to you by Hardline Curling Supplies, and I'm happy that it is brought by Hardline Curling Supplies because I'm a Hardline Nation member. My team's been using Hardline for the last 5 years. We were onto Hardline products before they were even on Dragon's Den. Can you believe that? Ice Pad. It's the most technologically advanced brush on the market. You don't believe me? 7 of the top 9 men's teams and 10 of the top 15 women's teams in the world are all using this brush. Kevin Cooey, Brad Gushu, Nicholas Adine, Anna Hasselborg, Reed Carruthers, Chelsea Carey, Mike McEwen, the list goes on. And they're great for the rec curler too. Don't just think, oh, I club curl, it's not good enough for me. It's phenomenal for you. It helps with your shoulders. You can use it for over 100 games. When your head wears out, you just throw it in the wash and you can use it again. It saves you money. It helps the environment. And they got a lot of great products too. They've got the best pants. Are you one of those cold curlers who's always complaining about how you're cold? Well, guess what? They've got super comfy and warm pants. They've got great shoes, shirts, helmets, broom bags, whatever you need. And if you were looking for that best delivery aid on the planet, that's Reed Carruthers Pro Slide, which you can get exclusively from Hardline Curling. It's guaranteed for life. Your one-stop shop for all your curling needs. So visit Hardline at www.hardlinecurling.com or go to any one of the 120 Hardline retailers around the world and get your products today. Okay, I start every interview the exact same way. Just tell me how you got started in curling.
Well, I was probably 9 years old and my dad was a curler. He'd curled ever since he was a teenager in like Oak Point, which is in Manitoba, and it's like population of like 50.
Okay.
And he played curling. So then he got my brother Joe into curling. And I would just kind of go out and I would be on the sheet beside them and I just want to slide. That's all I'd want to do. I wouldn't care about throwing a rock. I just want to slide. And every time I slid, I would get a little bit further and a little bit further. And then finally I started getting to the hog line and all I cared about was getting further and further and further. And so I started and I was like, hey, I think I could do this. And then I went into the junior program and I actually started with 5 of my friends. And all 5 dropped out the next year and I just kept going. And hey, and then you know what? I think it was the year after I got picked up by like some 20-year-olds. So I was pretty pumped
you're like
because
11?
I was 14.
Oh, 14. Okay.
I was 14 at the time. Yeah. And they asked me if I wanted to curl competitive with them. I did some bantams and stuff like that, you know, in the middle, you know, between I guess 11 and 14 or whatever it was. But so yeah, I played with them. And then the next year I got picked up by another, you know, 3 girls that were older. They were 20. And that was my first year that I went to the national. And then it kind of went from there. They, you know, aged out. So I started my own team and I started skipping from then on.
Bingo.
Yeah.
I've heard some rumors your brother's a pretty good player.
Oh, geez. He better not hear this. No, he is. He honestly, well, he's a really good golfer, but he is a good curler. It's just, he had a very hard loss.
Oh, really?
A few years ago, I was in Thunder Bay and he was playing against Jacobs. It was in the provincial final to go to the Briar, and he had a draw to the 8-foot to win the game, and he slid through, and I think he gave up a steal of 2 to lose.
I heard that he actually missed the 8-foot 3 times, but I'm not one to single him out here, Joe. But
yeah, you know what? He's an amazing curler, and he's got the head for it. He loves playing third, but also like now, I mean, he has children, and they're both in hockey, and he takes his time away from the family in the summer for golf. And he's a really good golfer.
Oh, okay. So he's playing like competitively.
Yeah, he's playing competitive. He's been like to the nationals for golf.
Oh, cool.
And he has to pick and choose. And in the winter, he's busy with the kids and hockey. So he chooses golf.
Okay. Well, fair enough. That is a tough. I mean, I remember reading about that loss to Jacobs and I was like, ooh.
Well, my husband was on the team too. And oh my goodness, that was very,
your brother
very
and
hard.
Your husband.
Yes, it was.
How do you let that happen? You let your brother and your husband curl together?
Well, you know what? That's how I met my husband. My brother and Mike were good friends. They were curling on the same curling team, and so Mike would come over to my house, and finally, it happened. We hooked up, and that was many, many years ago. So
yes. And did your brother ever have an issue with that? Was he ever like, "What the hell, Mike? Come on"?
I think he's always liked Mike. Oh, okay. So I think that was okay.
Yeah. Oh, well,
and
that's
good.
What?
We were like good friends for a little while too. Right. So
everyone kind of knew, like, okay, maybe this is happening. Like,
but it was funny because the year before we both went to the national, like my brother and Mike, and our team went to the national, and I was like, not even looking at Mike one bit. And then the year later, I was like, who is this
there's
guy?
all these all these other provinces here. Let's check out what's going on across Canada.
So that was when I was like 16, 17-ish. Like I was young,
I mean, we all were once, you know? Yeah, I understand. Okay, so let's talk about your junior career a little bit. Mm-hmm. This podcast is we're going to mostly go in chronological order. So we'll start with the juniors. So at the junior nationals, I noticed, you skipped there. I think you were skipped 3 times. Is that correct? At the junior nationals. And each time you're close to the playoffs, but you had almost the same record every time, either 6-6 or 7-5.
7-5, yeah.
So looking back, was there anything that stuck out as something you could have done that maybe would have got you closer or got you into that title picture?
Well, I remember the one year we started out 5-0 and we were like super excited, and you're like just so pumped. You're like, I'm the best. I'm on the top of the leaderboard, but you don't realize like what a long week it is. So 5-0 is like nothing really at the time but you're just thinking like right away you think, oh my goodness, final. Where now the Krista now, I would be like, okay, chill out, because you're so far away from that final that you can't think that way, right? But I mean, the more and more you win, the more and more you start thinking about the weekend and, getting into that final. And then we lost 5 straight. So
well, because at a national, not every 5-0 is the same either, right? Like
it depends who you play,
that's what I mean, right? Like if you start in those days with like, you play the territories first, and you get some of the easier, the Maritimes maybe aren't as strong, and so not every 5-0 is the same.
No, and we did play some good teams.
Yeah.
I remember that first 5, but yeah, something happened. We went downhill, and then 5-5 hit us hard, and we were like, we couldn't believe it. We were like shocked. Like, how did this happen? But and it's junior curling too, right?
Right, of course. So, yeah. The mood swings and the mental game is up and down.
Big time.
So looking back, that's something that you think that you might have dealt with better had you maybe worked a little bit more on the mental side of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was that team that I was with. We did do some mental training with my coach. I remember going to his house, and we had a psychologist come in and, do a little bit mental training with us, but nothing really to like what I know now about the game and about the mental training. I think it was more of like the visualizing your shot and, just keeping calm and cool. Like now I think it's so important off the ice, what you do, not just on the ice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, looking back now, I wish I could have had maybe someone help me out a little bit more with that. But at the time, you're just mostly trying to work on your technical and, you're not thinking too much about the mental aspect of the game. So.
Okay, so in your junior career as well, or just after, you were the first ever team to go to the Universiade for curling. Tell me about that experience, because I believe it was called not a demonstration sport, but it was something like an optional sport or something like that, not compulsory.
No.
So tell me about that experience. Like how did that even happen?
Oh, that was probably my craziest story, really.
Okay, love it. Lay it on me.
Well, I mean, getting there, it was in Brandon, so we got there and we were having lots of fun. And
this is the Canadian universities you're talking about in Brandon.
So the Nationals, and my husband Mike was there with his team, and we were just having fun. And I mean, we're of age, we're going to the bars because we're like, you know what, we're having fun, but we want to win, but at the same time, we're here to have fun because there's nothing after this. So you want to win, of course. But so anyways, we're having lots of fun. And then the night before the final, we're like, everybody's at the bar. And everyone's like partying hard. And so the next day, I remember I was not feeling good. And my third was throwing up, and it was bad. But we're like, we got to play. And the other team as well, they were out having fun too. And then anyways, we happened to win the game. And we're like, oh, this is awesome, woo! And that was March. And then in August, I got a phone call from my coach saying that this is like the first time that they're going to have a University Worlds. And we won, so they're inviting us to go to Italy to play into the Worlds. And we're shocked. I've never been to the Worlds before. So to me, I was like jumping around in my house. I was jumping on my bed, screaming. I was so excited because, I get to wear a Team Canada jackets and Maple Leaf on our back. And, and then we got to go with Mike McEwen's team because they had won. So, we became friends with them, and we stayed in this little tiny like hotel house type thing. That was lots of fun. And we were in this little tiny city called Clout or town, I guess. So it was kind of away from everything else, but we were in our own little area, and that was tons of fun. There was like discos and all these things happening in the little town. And that was a blast. That was honestly like, we were there for 2 weeks, and I can remember everything. It was awesome.
Would you have treated it differently at the Canadian universities had you known that?
Yeah, and we'd probably lose because we'd be so uptight. And so this way we're having some drinks and having fun, and we were probably loose and not really caring too much and happened to win. Maybe that's what we should have done this weekend.
I was going to say, so that's the lesson that you learned.
Yes.
If you drink and one of your teammates is throwing up if Kendra's throwing up before the game, then we're good. This is how we're going to make it happen.
That has happened.
Oh, really?
One spiel, our very first year together, we were in Duluth, and Duluth happens to be like kind of more of the fun party scene type.
Sure.
And we were having a few drinks, and Kendra came in later, and she couldn't go to sleep because she was going to throw up. And we found out like weeks later that she was throwing up, but she wouldn't tell us because we were a brand new team. I think that was our first or second spiel. So she was super nervous because she didn't know how we were going to react, and we ended up winning the bond spiel. So maybe that's a good luck thing.
So I think I think actually Kendra's been letting you down by not getting super hungover.
Yeah, it's all her fault.
It is. Kendra, what the hell?
Yes.
So you go to the Universiade, and like, what did you gain from that experience? So it ended up being, like you said, your first experience at a Worlds. What do you think you gained from that moving forward?
Oh, like the international experience is unbelievable. Plus, going and adjusting to time change and, the food and things like that. Like, you have to really think about those things that you don't normally would think, that you have to think about what am I going to eat, or is it going to be okay settling in my stomach, or the time change, or how long you're away from home. Like we were away from home for over 2 weeks. So that, you have to think about that, a little bit of adjustment. But I mean, on the ice, it was awesome. It was like just playing against other countries and, playing against some of those teams that you've heard about, but you've never really played against. Is always a really neat experience. And then, when you play those teams, you have nothing, no thoughts of who you're playing. So you just go and play your game and hope to win.
So the final didn't go so great for you.
No, not so well.
So was that because it kind of seemed serendipitous that you even got there?
Yeah.
Was it like really crushing that you lost the final in that way?
Yeah,
or
like
just
at the
in
time,
general? Yeah.
at the time it was super crushing because we were one of the best teams there, I thought. But Russia was a really good team. And, like some of them, they're still, on Sidorov's team and they're really good curlers. And I look at them and I watch them on, on the slams and stuff and, they're great curlers. So to lose to them, it wasn't too bad because they're now still curling. When you play curlers that kick your butt and then they're not curling anymore, it's like, it's like a downer.
Come on,
but
man.
At least there's some of them that beat us that are still curling.
So you had a lot of success in juniors, and I ask a lot of curlers this, what was the transition like into women's? Because I feel like for you, it's even more pronounced because you're going from your Northern Ontario, you get to represent Northern Ontario at the junior nationals, but at the time when you came out of juniors, it was just Ontario. Yeah. So did that affect the transition at all? Like, what did that look like when you were coming out of juniors?
Well, the first year I was playing with we formed a team, and we didn't do very well at the provincials. Like we struggled, and I think I was obviously still playing a junior game. And you're like intimidated by some of them too, because like Allison Goring, we played her, and Anne Merklinger, we were playing her, and like I've watched them on TV how many times. So playing against them is intimidating, right? And I'm this, young 20-year-old trying to win. And then the next year we made it to the final and we lost to Jen Hanna. And so that's, I think, when I started really realizing that I can maybe start competing with them. And then the year later, actually, that year, the team that I went to the final with, we met at the end of the year and the three of them just said, like, I don't think I could do this anymore. Like, it's just too much. And they were, one of them was starting a teaching career and didn't want to take the time off. And it was just getting a little bit too much for them. So it happened that Tara George and Lorraine Lang, they called me up and they said they wanted, they needed someone to play with them. So I kind of jumped on that team. And that year is when we won to go to the Scotties the first time. And I think having Lorraine on the team took the intimidation factor away from like the Allison Gorings and the Anne Merklingers. And I think the fact that we were in the final the year before helps too, because you're like, okay, it's not a fluke. I can make it to another final. And, you start thinking about that a little bit, but just having like experience with Tara on the team and with Lorraine on the team, like they are bringing the experience. So it kind of helped me, get to the point that I needed to get at. For
sure. And so when you when you did first come out, was there a sense of like, okay, I'm playing full Ontario now. Like, did you ramp up your schedule at all? Was there different things you did in your preparation, or were you just kind of like, well, this is the way it is? Well,
I think when I started playing with Tara and Lorraine, I definitely started practicing a lot more and like more like thorough practices, like, like detailed practices and making sure that they're meaningful practices, because like Rick and Lorraine, they have amazing experience and they know what they're doing, obviously. And so Rick was our coach too, or no, this was later, but like just having them around all the time for practice, they obviously have the best of the best. So they were teaching me tons. And so I think practicing a little bit more, we did spiel, not tons, with Tara and Lorraine and Tiffany, but we did spiel, a fair amount. We were going to better spiels, not just, some of the local ones. We were going like actually flying around the country a bit more.
So when I interviewed, this is the second time I've interviewed you. I interviewed you for Curling Canada for Magical Question Fun Time, and you talked about Lorraine and sort of the friendship that you cemented, and she's 25 years older than you. Talk to me a little bit about that, because this has come up a couple times when I was interviewing Mark Kennedy, and we talked a little bit about how that's kind of the way it used to be, that, when you were older, you looked for the good young curlers that were coming up and you wanted to play with them. And that doesn't seem to happen as much anymore. So first of all, just talk specifically about Lorraine. You know, what was the early part of that partnership like, and how did it blossom into this like amazing friendship that you ended up having?
Like at first, she's 25 years older. So I was thinking like, what am I getting into here? Like I went from a team of everyone kind of around my age, maybe a couple years older, to Lorraine and Tara, who's I think she's 9 or 10 years older than me, but Lorraine specifically is 25 years older than me. But you know what? It was weird because you wouldn't think that someone that age or that age difference you would become great friends with. But you know what? At the time, she was just someone that you could always go to her for everything. Honestly, anything at all. If it was like boy troubles, you go to Lorraine. If it was like anything with work or school or anything, you go to Lorraine. Like she always seems to have the right answer. And even now, you go to Lorraine and you could just trust that she's going to tell you the truth, that she's going to be honest, and you're going to get the right answer all the time. And I think that's how we grew close, is I'd always go to her and ask her things. And I felt really confident on the ice with her. And she would like straight up tell me, no, you can't play this call. Or I don't think, you should go with this. Or you know what, Krista, just go with your gut. So just little things here and there. I felt like we're always developing our relationship and, spending tons of time off the ice. Like they're my second family, my curling team, right? So I think that is what blossomed our relationship. And still now, even though, she's not curling, she's still around and she's coached for years now. So I think, our relationship is still going and they're a lot of fun. Like Rick and Lorraine are a lot of fun.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Great people. So how long did it take, would you say, before you felt comfortable? Because I've played with older people before as well, like same age as you. I mean, I wasn't curling at the level that you were, but was playing competitively. In my first year out of men's, I was playing with a guy that was like 30 years older than me. Oh, yeah. And then the year after with a guy 20 years older. So in those situations, I remember like it does take a while to build that chemistry. Yeah. Was it pretty instant with Lorraine, or did it take a while? Like what did it look like before it started to? Yeah,
I mean, I was pretty young then, so I really went to Lorraine for everything, like any kind of shot too. I always look to Lorraine to see if that's the right answer. Or, right. So it was almost like she was just always there for me and always kind of had my back. So that made things easy for sure. And I don't know. I guess looking back, I always felt comfortable with them. Okay. I never really felt like it was an awkward team, or I don't know, we seemed to gel really well.
Do you think that is something that is missing a little bit in today's game, that the older players aren't maybe bringing the juniors in as much, that it seems like now the swaps are just, I'll take a couple 35-year-olds from that team and put them on my team. Yeah,
or else I feel like the young ones are sticking together, which is a good thing, I think, too. But yeah, like the young ones are sticking together to form like Rachel's team. Yeah. I mean, they were super young. They've, curled together for years. They made small changes, but they've basically been going together. But why would you change something that's so good, right?
For sure. So you go on from there, and then you win Ontario 4 times in 5 years. Pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think was the key to that? Like what kind of broke it open for you? You talked a little bit about how you had made a final previously, and you've talked a little bit about Lorraine, but as a team, like what was kind of what broke that open for you, where you're all of a sudden the team to beat in Ontario?
Yeah, honestly, it was shocking because you never really think of yourself as the team to beat.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of hard work, like outside of Bonspiels, and even to this day, outside of Bonspiels, like we practiced tons. And it's nice that we get to practice together. So with that team, with Lorraine and Tara, and it was Carrie McLean and Tiffany Stubbings when we switched things out, but we were always together on the ice. So we always had really big practices, and it was demanding at times for sure, because you might be tired, or, you just want to break here and there, but that hard work is going to get you somewhere. And, you look back at the previous year that you went to the Scotties and you're like, I worked really hard, so I'm going to do it again because I want to go to the Scotties and I want to try and win the Scotties. So it was just a lot of hard work at home. I wasn't like we spieled. We're not the team that's going to spiel 7 or 8 spiels in a row, or we do our 5 and we get up for those 5. So we want to try and win or qualify in all of them to help us out. And we did that for, a number of years. We did that. So anytime we were in a spiel, we qualified in a couple of them, or, we always did pretty good in a few of them at least, to kind of get us some points to keep us up there.
So it kind of mirrored juniors. You got to the Scotties. Your first year, you didn't, had a losing record. But then after that, same kind of thing. You're always around the playoffs, but not in the playoffs. if you look back and you think about that, what do you think the difference was between you and maybe those squads that were making the playoffs and were just kind of that, like, what was that kind of 5% that you were missing?
I think a big part of it was the Scotties ice. We weren't used to that curl. We weren't used to the speed and the just adjusting to it, I think took us a long time. Our curling clubs have straighter ice, so we would practice, but we'd never practice properly, I think, to like perform well on that curly ice. So I don't think we adjusted very well, but then consistently going back every couple of years, you know what you're going to expect. Like, you know, the ice is going to curl, and you know that you have to throw like the right weight when you're throwing taps, or you're going to be flying by and you're going to look like an idiot, or, you just start thinking about the ice a little bit more and preparing yourself for that, where I don't think I did that really, in the early years that I went to the Scotties.
And do you think that that's how, like, I know a lot of people talk about this, but the women didn't really have slams back then.
No.
So like no one was really playing on arena ice. So do you think that that's helped you now, flash ahead to now a little bit, that you are getting these opportunities to play on arena ice more and it's replicating the Scotties?
Yeah, I think it's really good. Like, we haven't played tons of slams, but
right.
Every time we get to go on arena ice, we always think that it's a learning situation where we're going to learn something from it. And even this weekend here at the slam, like today, I finally, I felt like, I know the ice. I want to start over now.
Yeah.
It's our fourth game, but it takes some time, and, lots of those teams are, going from slam ice to slam ice. Well, we're going from curling club to curling club, which is totally different. Not making an excuse, because that's our choice, not to like go hard and try and get points so we can get in the slam. But, it is a little bit difficult, playing on that arena ice when you're not really used to it. And you have to adjust. And we just took too long this weekend. But, normally in the Scotties, I feel like we pick it up a little bit faster. So
in that you go 4 out of 5 years. Were there things that did you feel like there were things that you were changing, but the results just still weren't there? Or, because I would imagine that, you would try to change some things, right?
Yeah. I remember one Scotties that we were curling, and I remember we had a tight turnover. So we'd have our lunch, we'd go and sit in the restaurant. And I remember the whole time we'd be talking curling. And I remember leaving that Scotties, and I just felt so mentally drained that I was like exhausted, like so exhausted. And it wasn't physically, I'm Skip, I don't do anything but stand there and yell. But I just felt so exhausted. And I remember the next year going back, and I just said to my coach that year, I was like, I need to take breaks. I mentally need off a little bit, because I can't go from one game so mentally into it to like talking mentally at dinner and then going back on the ice. And I was just so exhausted. And that was the year we lost the tiebreaker to Cheryl Bernard. And I remember in that tiebreaker, I felt like my brain was going to explode. I just felt like toast. And you know what? Like, if we happened to make it past there, we weren't going any further. I was toast.
And so that was something that you actually sat down with your team and discussed, I need to not talk about curling when it's over. Oh yeah, we definitely. And you know what? After that, I think the next year we made it to the Scotties, and I'm not sure if we had Rick as our coach or if we had Tom again the next year. But I remember we were all like, okay, guys, like, look, we're going to do our debriefing, and then we got to chill for a little while. And then you always have to debrief before you get into the next game. But if it was a tight turnover, it was like a quick talk. Let's mentally like go for a walk, joke around, bug each other. That always, is the best, right? Laugh a little and just get away from curling, and then you can get back into it and feel refreshed. So why do you think for you that is so important? Because I feel like there are some teams that they can just talk curling all the time and they don't need that break. Why do you think that is for you, that you kind of need that break? I don't know. I don't know if it's because like I'm skipping and I'm like just so on for like the 2.5 hours or whatever, like so on that I don't think about anything else. When I'm curling, I'm out there focused, and that's it. When I'm done, I want to talk about it and I want to learn from, the situations. But after I'm done that, I'm like, okay, I got to just chill, because my brain is just packed and I need it to like refresh before the next game. And even if it's, like last night I was laying in bed and I just like every single shot was going over and over in my head, and I had a hard time sleeping. And,
if there's a tight turnover and you have that going on, then, I mean, I don't think it's a healthy thing, because you have to forget about, I curled horrible last night. So like every single shot
Right.
that I was like, I didn't make, it was just going over and over in my head. And if I can't get rid of that, I feel like I'd probably go into the next game curling horrible again. Right. So I don't know, when there's tight turnovers, I mentally just need a break. And like Sarah can talk curling like 24/7.
Well, Sarah can just talk 24/7. I mean, we can cut it.
Oh yeah, Sarah likes to talk. Oh yeah, we got to turn her mic down on TV sometimes.
This episode of Stone and Straw is brought to you in part by Dynasty Curling. Dynasty Curling is a Canadian company that has been around since 2015, changing the landscape of curling apparel both on and off the ice. And my team uses Dynasty. We're repping the Dynasty clothes out there. They're super comfortable, super nice. And we're not the only ones who use them. Obviously, Olympic and world champions, Team Jennifer Jones, Team Chelsea Carey, Team Gushu, Team Adine, Team Kui, and many more. If you follow them on Twitter at Dynasty Curling, you can see their insanely good roster. But what a lot of people probably don't know is that Dynasty also creates a lot of curling products for off the ice as well. It could be hats and hoodies that just have the Dynasty logo on it, which look great. They have gear to support your favorite team or your favorite province at the Brier or the Scotties. And they also have workout gear, which is really cool too. So you should obviously check them out, and especially check out that apparel. You probably didn't know. You probably just think, oh, it's only this sublimated curling gear I see on the ice. No, they have awesome off-ice stuff, and because they're really sweet, they have a deal just for you for listening to this podcast. If you use the promo code STONESTRAW at checkout, you'll get 10% off your any purchase you make of Dynasty off-ice apparel. So that's pretty amazing. So head on over to dynastycurling.com, enter in the promo code STONESTRAW, and you'll get 10% off your order of Dynasty off-ice apparel. And if you live in Winnipeg, they just opened a retail store, so you can check that out at the Granite Club in Winnipeg, or check them out online at Dynasty Curling on Twitter, Instagram, or dynastycurling.com. Okay, so let's talk about the 2009 Olympic trials, because I feel like that was, so you hadn't quite broken through at the Scotties, but the Olympic trials, boom, you did break through. So I have a couple questions about that. First of all, like, how do you prepare for it? Because I feel like I'm always interested, because I feel like there's always, in any curling Olympic scenario, there's always teams that have prepared for the entire 4 years. Yeah. That was their whole thing was, we're going to the Olympics, or we want to go to the Olympics, and everything's geared towards that. And I feel like your team probably wasn't that, I'm guessing. Yeah. So how do you prepare for the pre-trials and then the trials? What does that look like for your team? Well,
I mean, when it comes to the Olympics, like, and still now, our team is not like, we're going to the Olympics, we want to gain every single point to try and get to the Olympic. Like, that's not our team. We don't travel enough. So anytime we get points, we're like, this is a bonus. Hey, maybe we can get into the pre-trials. So going into the pre-trials, we're like, you know what? We have to just relax and enjoy this. And you know what? Hey, we're curling on arena ice. We're going to get a little more experience for the Scotties, hopefully, because the Scotties is our main goal.
Right.
So every time that we've actually made it to the pre-trials, we're just like, you know what? This is a bonus for us. And then, like the 2009 one, we happened to win the pre-trials. So we're like, hey, we got another week on slam or on arena ice, and more time to learn that ice to get to the Scotties. And so, I mean, before any competition, we go really hard practicing, and we have some good, like, meaningful practices and that sort of thing. But like any pre-trials that we've been to, or any trials that we've been to, is kind of like, you know what? We may be the underdogs. Let's just have fun. Let's relax. And you know what? If we lose them all, well, we're the underdogs. And if we win them all, hey, it's even better. But so that's kind of how we take the pre-trials and the trials, is we don't really want the stress on our back, because that's not what we're going for. Obviously, I'd love it if I ever made it to the Olympics, but that's not our main goal. So it's kind of a bonus for us. Right.
And so is there a moment, like in the 2009 trials, for example, is there a moment where that switch flips on and you start to go, oh, wow, we're like getting pretty close?
Well, I'm a very competitive person.
Right.
So any game that I'm in, it doesn't matter if it's like Tuesday men's league at home, we want to win. Right. And it's just like, it's a natural thing. And, when you're trying to play any shot, you just want to make that shot so bad. So, every time you get a win, you start thinking, oh, I'm not doing too bad here and I can play another game. Oh, I made another shot to win, or, those type of things. So you start thinking about that. And ideally, like, you want to make it to the final and you want to win. But I mean, every game is kind of like a bonus game for us.
So you never thought, there was never a time during that whole thing, like you make it to the semifinal. There was no moment where you're like, holy shit, we're in the semifinal to go to the Olympics.
There's definitely a holy shit in there for sure. A couple of them. But again, I feel like because we were the underdogs and it was our first time really getting that far in anything, we were like, hey, this is the best thing ever. Were we super nervous? Absolutely. But we were just kind of like, hey, we win. That's awesome. We lose. Oh, wow. Like, we did really good. And okay, we'll just kind of go with it. Right. And I think that's how everyone felt. And I mean, I don't think anyone predicted us to go into the semifinal.
Yeah.
So we were the underdog. So we were, I mean, obviously you want to win every single time, and it was sad and disappointing, but I do remember that first pre-trial or the trials when we lost out. Everyone was like, you must be exhausted. I had my daughter who was like 5 months old and I was nursing and I was like running and not sleeping and I was just, going crazy. And I was like, no, I feel really good, really good. Like, I'm not tired at all. Like, the minute we lost out, I sat down in the change room and I was like, whoa, I'm dead. Like, I was just toast. You just kind of like, the adrenaline keeps you going. And so anytime you're in a competition, like especially going, into the weekend when you're in the finals or semifinals or whatever it is, like the adrenaline's just pumping. So you're just super excited to be out there. And, the Scotties final that we were in, that was a little bit different because our goal is to win the Scotties. And so,
right.
To be that close, I think that's the most nervous I've ever been. But
okay, well, we're going to get to that.
I don't want to jump ahead.
We're going in order, Krista. How dare you? No, that's okay. But I did want to, I'm stuck on 2009 a little bit here because the other thing is you had to play 3 games that day. Mm-hmm. Like, what the hell?
That was hard. That was crazy.
That's so crazy. So for those listeners who don't know, you had to win 2 tiebreakers and then the semifinal was that same day.
Yeah.
I mean, that just seems cruel to me.
Yeah, I think they changed the draw. That will never happen again because of that. Yeah.
I've never seen that happen again. Like, there's never been that. So do you ever look back and feel like a little bit cheated that this is like almost the Krista McCarville rule of like, oh, we don't really want someone to have to play 3 games in a day? It's
funny because we found out after that the rule changed. Like, that'll never happen again, which I was like, oh, that is kind of cool because we did that, But I remember that day. That was like, when you talk about mental training and all that, like that was mentally exhausting day. But again, it's adrenaline, right? The adrenalines keep you going and you're just, game by game, you're like, hey, I don't think I'm really meant to be here, but I'm here and we're curling good and this is what we're doing and we're beating these teams. So you're just going with it. And yeah, I remember it being like super, super tiring. Like, looking back now, at the time, that day, I felt great.
Right. So did that, because you talked about how, everything's a bonus for you and whatever. When you have that success and you get that close, did that spark something in you where you're like, I got a lot of confidence, I'm playing good? Did that spark something where you thought, maybe this should be my goal?
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely that year, like the 2009 year when we did so well at the pre-trials and then the trials. I think going into the Scotties, I did have more confidence. And I think our whole team had more confidence because we played so well earlier in the year that I think we went to the Scotties and we're like, we can do this. Like, like we've played on the arena ice. Like, we're good. Like, we can actually do this now. And then, I mean, that year we went, we lost the semifinal again that year. But, you got to the point where you're like, I can actually play with these teams now.
So, but it never occurred to you, like, maybe we should do more stuff.
Yes and no. Yeah. Like, I get people asking me all the time. a lot of curlers actually asking me all the time, like, why don't you guys like spiel more? Why don't you guys go to more so you can gain the points and try to get to the slams? And like, honestly, my thought, and I know lots of people will totally disagree, but I love my job. I love teaching and that's my job. Like, that's number 1 to me. And curling is like something fun that I love to do, but it's not my job. Right. And lots of people have it as their job and like totally props out to them. Like, that's great, but that's not for me. Like, I don't want to do that. I love my job. I love teaching every day. And I also I miss my family. I don't want to be away from my family, especially like my kids. It's like back, when my kids were a little bit younger, it was actually easier than it is now.
Right.
So they were younger and they'd be, coming to the curling club and playing on the ice and goofing around. And now they're like, Mom, I don't want to go. And, they're
they
both
have
in
their
hockey.
own personality now.
Yeah. And they're like, curling club again. Like, so, I mean, it was way easier back then, but I mean, like that's honestly the reason. And my school board is awesome. They will grant me my time, but we've talked as a team and I like 5 spiels is good. And that's what we like to do. And we practice really hard.
So do you ever think, I was going to ask you about this and we're already into it. So let's talk about it. Like, do you ever think that there would be a time like maybe 10 years from now or 20 years from now or whatever, where you look back and you regret maybe not going harder?
Yeah, maybe for sure. I mean, lately, like a lot lately, I've been really thinking about, spending time with family. And I feel like, my kids are getting to the age now where, like my daughter already doesn't want to hold my hand when we're in public and things like that. And I'm like, am I missing out on those little things that I want to experience with my family? So right now I feel like, no, I don't want to go hard. And I don't know. I mean, maybe a few years ago, it would have been easier to go hard. But at the same time, then my kids are young and they're like, I miss my mommy.
Right.
Or they can't, like, at least now when I go away, I can have conversations with them.
Yeah.
Where like back, years ago, I couldn't.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe 20 years ago. I'll think about it.
Okay, hold on. Rory is here, I think. Okay. He always forgets his keys.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Oh, hey. What's up?
Oh, Rory, that was here.
No, I don't think so. Oh. We're just doing a pod. It's all good. Hey, man, nice to see you. It is his room, but he's not here. I don't know where.
How are you?
Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. It's all good.
Pause.
Yeah, we'll hit pause. It's all good.
Yeah.
We'll catch up with you guys.
Yeah,
Okay, sounds good. We just got interrupted by the Olympic gold medalists, Matt Hamilton and John Landsteiner. Yeah, it's okay. Well, Rory and I'm sharing a room with Rory McCusker, who works for the Grand Slam, and we've gone through 7 different room keys because Rory forgets them all the time. So I just assumed it was him. Anyway, we're in the middle of a serious conversation and we get so interrupted, but that's okay. Let's reverse. We'll come back to that.
Sure.
But let's talk about your original decision to walk away. So you'd had all this success. You're playing great. Things are going pretty well. And then you decide that you're going to take a couple years off. So talk to me about that. What was the, obviously family, but elaborate a little more.
Yeah, I think that was the main thing. So I just had my son. So I was on mat leave with him and we curled quite a bit, like a fair amount. And then the next year I was going to go back to teaching full time, and I was going to have a 3-4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And it was honestly, I could feel it inside that I was just ready for a little break. And it was just like the craziness of like work and after work and like suppers and lunches and, just the whole life thing was just like, I could tell curling was just getting to the point where I was almost losing the passion a little bit because of all those things and just the busyness of life. And I mean, I took that year off and right away, I knew I hated it. I wanted to get back to curling.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I almost I had that year to adjust to getting back to teaching full time and adjust to having 2 children and, just slowing life down a little bit without the busy pace of running to the curling club and all that. So I think, just the fact that I adjusted to all that helped me think that, hey, maybe I can go back to curling and do this.
So what, so you take this time off. What was your team thinking about that? Like when you had that conversation of I'm stepping back, was that something that was surprising to them?
Well, I don't know if it was super surprising. I mean, Ashley was stepping back as well. And Carrie was as well. So basically our whole team kind of, except for Sarah, and Sarah's young at the time. And she was, ready to go and she wanted to play. And I think she was probably the most disappointed, but she formed, with Kendra and a new team. So, which brought me back to, our current team, which was good. But I don't know. I just, the 3 of us, I think, thought the same thing. We just needed a little bit of time off. And so that's what we did.
And so there was no, let's not do this. Everyone was on the same page, I guess.
I think everyone respects everybody,
Yeah, of course.
I mean, Carrie didn't come back. She has 2 little girls, so she's busy. And we respect the fact that she doesn't want to come back. And Ashley, she has a child on the way, and she's already informed us that she's not coming back for, next year, because she knows life is going to be really hectic and busy. So, I respect that. I know it is crazy with 2 kids and life is busy, but, everyone, makes their own choices, and
Sure.
we respect it.
So did I just get a scoop on my pod that Ashley's not coming back next year?
Well, as of right now, no, she's not. But hey, you know what? She could be like me, where I was like, I hated the time off, because she now just officially finished her last game with us.
Right.
So she has the rest of the year off. And that's kind of where I was at, right? I kind of, what I do, I finished the Olympic trials that year, and then I kind of finished from there. So who knows? Maybe she will come back, but she has informed us before that if she had ever had a second,
then
she'd have to give it a break for a bit. And
so you hated it. Is that kind of what made you decide to come back, or was there like a specific moment where you're like, no, I'm doing it, like this is happening?
Well, I do remember. So I remember, for that year, I had a challenging class that year, and I remember I felt like it was just like teaching to mom. My kids were little, and I felt like I never had that getaway time. And curling at the time was like my getaway from everything. I got away from teaching. I got away from, the family. I got away from housework and laundry, and,
yeah.
You get away. And when I'm curling, I don't think about anything else but curling. And I think that's like the best part of it is that. And so I remember being at the curling club, and the women's provincials were there, and Sarah and Kendra were playing in the provincial final. And I remember Ashley and I were sitting together watching, and I was just like, oh my God, I got to be there next year. Like, I have to be curling. I have to be in this final next year. Like, it just killed me not to be curling. And it's so hard to watch, and you're like just dying with every shot. So you're like, oh, I just want to be out there so bad. And after that, I was just like, okay, I got to be out there. And then that's when I went back.
So talk to me a little bit about your husband and all this, Mike. So you're kind of, you're back, you're not back, you're back. Like what's his role in all of this? Was he just completely supportive, or was there lots of discussions?
No, he's very supportive. Like, he knows that, like, our team is at the point where we could make it big, or, we're talented enough to be in the slams and those type of things. So he's very supportive of all that. Was it last year, 2 years ago, he took the year off, and he as well hated the fact that I was curling and he wasn't. And, I'd be going away to Bonspiels and he'd be at home with the kids. And I think that was killing him. So he went back to curling last year, not super hard, but still some curling. And I think he felt better with that. But, I think if I ever give up competitive curling, I think Mike will too. So then we can do family things, because we've never really done family things,
Right.
Like, we do have our summers off together. We're both teachers.
So that's good.
And curlers. So we have our summers to do things, but we've never ever done like the winter things together.
Right.
And we very much shuffle our kids. Like, it'll be like, meet me at Safeways, because I'm going to drop the kids off to you, and then I'm going to go this place. And like, our life is basically like meeting up, trying to figure out like car seats, and okay, you take the kids here. And now my kids, like, both being in hockey, it's like shuffling around everywhere.
And so much gear.
So much gear, and like hockey equipment everywhere. Oh my goodness.
And it stinks, and it's terrible. Yeah.
It's pretty much my basement.
So when you started to think about coming back, was that an immediate, so you said like you watched Kendra and Sarah play. How does how does the formation of that team come together when you've taken this time off and then you decide you're going to come back, and you're able to come back with like an extremely strong team?
Well, I remember actually in that final talking to Rick. So Rick was there watching, and I remember him talking, and he's like, so what do you think, Krista? Like, do you like watching this? And I remember talking to him about it, and I was like, Rick, I'm only coming back if you coach me, like joking around with him. And he's like, no, I'm not coaching, like joking around. Then he's like, well, I think I would coach you if you came back. So anyways, we were joking around about that. And Ashley was there too. So Ashley's like, well, I think I would come back if you came back. And then we're like, okay, we got to like try and figure something out with Sarah, and, try to get her team, or her back onto our team. And so then, at the end of the year, when their team was done, like, they had a 1-year deal. And so we were talking, and Rick kept saying to me, like, you should watch Kendra. Like, she's a good shooter. And I mean, I saw her a little bit in the provincials when we played in the Ontarios. And then I watched her in Fort William when they were there for the provincial. And, and then the fact that it was Northern Ontario, it wasn't Ontario anymore. That's a pretty big deal as well. Yeah. So we're like, oh, maybe we can like get Sarah back on our team, and then maybe we could steal Kendra. And so that's, a lot of like sneakiness, but we did it, and it just happened to, form that team.
And you guys were really good right away. Is that something that you were expecting to happen?
No. Well, actually, our first Bonspiel, we went to Winnipeg or Portage, and we got killed. We went, I think, 1, 2, 3, gone. And our like, I think all of us were like, oh my goodness, what just happened? Like, we're this new team. We suck. Like, we can't win a game. We're like, oh my God, what happened? And then I think we won like the next 4 after that. So then we're like, okay, yep, good decision. Yeah. They left their old team and joined this winning team and that sort of thing. So from then on, it was like, just straight up. And then that was the year that we were in the Scotties final.
Yeah. So talk to me about that Scotties. So it's your first year as a team.
Yep.
You had a great run. You're in the final. So you kind of alluded to this earlier, but at what point during the week did you start to think like, okay, we're going pretty good? Because I remember distinctly in the lead up to the Scotties, when people were talking about the favorites, your name wasn't getting mentioned, but it wasn't a surprise at the same time because you'd been there so many times and whatever. So at what point was it a team belief? Like, oh yeah, like maybe we got a shot at this.
I think it was probably like getting into the playoffs. I mean, like I said, like it is such a long week at the Scotties that you could never really think ahead. You have to just think one game. And it's so cliche. People are one game, one rack at a time. But honestly, it's like one game at a time because there's so many games and at any point you can lose a game. So it's like, just kind of kicking along one game at a time, winning and, trying to get those playoffs. And then once we got to the playoffs, like we were playing really well. And, we were in the one game and we were getting beat by Carey, and like somehow we managed to pull that game out. Like, I don't know how, but many times in the Scotties that year, we'd be down and somehow magically we would win the game.
Right.
And we're like, how did that happen? Like we were down like 4 and we happened to win. Like how? So we ended up beating Carey, and we're like, oh man, now we have to play Jones. Jeez. But we're like, well, we're first year. We're pretty happy to be in the semifinal. And then I remember it was the 9th end of that game against Jones, and we were like trailing the whole game. And I remember she put the broom down for a hit to take 1 to go up 2, I think, on us. And I remember she put the broom down. And I thought, that's really tight ice. And she threw it like fine at the broom, and she hit and rolled out and she gave us a steal. So then going into the last end, I was like, oh my goodness, I think we have a chance. Like we have a chance to at least go to an extra end and have hammer. And then she missed that one shot, the draw, to the 4-foot, I think, to take her 1. And I think I was in complete shock, like absolute complete shock that we won that game, because we shouldn't have won that game. But I think of like probably 5 or 6 other games that whole week we should not have won, but magically we won it somehow. So that was like a lot of luck on our side that year to get to the final, but you got to take it.
You have to. And did you ever have a point where you kind of thought like, oh, maybe I cheated a little bit? Like you had all these years where you're going hard all year and in a row, all these years in a row. Then you take time off and you come back and you get further than you ever got.
Oh, absolutely. It's like how this magic team just put together and hasn't played together in a long time. And I think the curling gods were just on our side the whole year. And so
you had that panic going into the final then. So that was when it finally sunk in, like, oh my God, I'm playing for the thing I've always wanted.
Yeah, that's my dream, obviously, is to win the Scotties. Like, above everything else, I think my dream is to win the Scotties.
And so you lost.
Yeah.
Wow. So how do you deal with that? Because you got so close. And then, like, I would imagine for your team especially, it may have been even almost tougher to come back the year after because I don't know. I guess if you're one of the top teams and you're a top team all the time, then you come back and you probably think like, okay, well, we're just back at it.
Yeah.
You probably thought like, oh, that was a pretty charmed run to the final. Like, was it really tough to come back?
Yeah, it was hard because, you think too, like, was it a fluke that I was there? Like, am I ever going to do this again? Am I ever going to be able to get to the final again? And you start almost like doubting yourself a little bit, and you start thinking like, maybe that was a fluke and maybe we weren't even supposed to be in that final. And like maybe that's why we didn't win, because we weren't very good and we just fluked it out, or the curling gods were on our side that year. So maybe we're not that good. Like you do start doubting a little bit. But then like that year we still won a couple spiels and we did well in the spiels. And I mean, so that really helps. It kind of brings your confidence up a little bit more because, you know, it was crushed after that final. Like, I mean, even though we were a new team, Chelsea's team was a new team as well. So, you know, you kind of just start thinking and then, you know, just playing well again, and then winning the provincials again that year, getting to the Scotties, you know, you start building confidence a little bit more. And, you know, I'll never forget that final. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. And I'll remember the feeling, you know, being in it and before it and waiting all day to play it. I'll never forget that. But
so it kind of begs the question a little bit that if you make the Scotties final, you don't win, you get so close to this, and that didn't make you want to play more. Like, is there anything that would make you want to play more? Okay, what's that?
There's one thing. I said if I win the Scotties, I think like we'll get some really good opportunities after winning the Scotties. I said I'll probably take a little bit of time off work and I'll travel more to play.
Yeah, because I guess you'd get the Continental Cup. Mm-hmm. You'd presumably be in the Slams or close to it. Yeah. So that would be the one thing is if you win the Scotties, then you'll play more. But that's it. That's the only thing.
That's it. Yep.
Okay.
You know, I mean, just something little.
No, that's fair. Yeah, just a little thing. Just if I win the Scotties, then I'll play more. That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people, this is a direct quote this week, and this is, like you said, a lot of curlers talk to you about it. Direct quote this week from someone who, when I told them I was interviewing you, they're like, I think that if she played more, they'd be a top 5 team in the world. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that's true?
I believe it's true. Yeah, for sure. I think we could be up there. But who goes to say that if we're curling more, we're not going to curl as good? You know what I mean? Like sometimes I think that a little bit. Sometimes I think like when we go to those spiels, we're so excited to play a spiel because we haven't played a spiel in like 3 weeks that we're super pumped and we play good because we're pumped to be there. So who goes to say like we play every weekend or, you know, quite a bit and maybe, you know, the passion's going to dwindle a little bit because I'm playing too much and I miss my family and I don't want to be traveling this much.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I don't know. It's hard to say. And we'll see, hopefully, if the time comes.
Are you nervous that your type of team is slowly more and more getting pushed out of the game? Because it does feel like the top teams are doing so much more that it's becoming so much harder to keep up with them.
Oh, yeah.
Does that disappoint you in some ways that you can't be a full-time teacher and mom and and have the life that you have?
Yeah, it's very disappointing. And you see it more and more every single year. And I think Rachel's teams kind of pushed the bar even more because they got so good that those other top, 8 teams or whatever, 7, 6 teams, they needed to kind of push it even more because Rachel was getting so good that I think they needed to do something to get better. And they need to travel more and they need to kind of like forget about their jobs and just concentrate on curling to do that. But like I said before, like curling's not number one to me. My job and my family are number one to me. And curling is something I want to do for fun. And like when curling's not fun to me, I'm not going to do it. Right. And that's just the way I feel with it. And like my job, I love my job. And if I didn't like my job, I'd probably say, hey, I want to curl more. But I love my job. So it's hard. It really is hard.
Yeah, because you love it so much you actually worked during the Slam this week. Are you the first person in history that's just worked during the Grand Slam?
It's kind of funny because when we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, everyone was like, what's going to happen? Like, are you going to, because we didn't know our schedule either. And I said, well, like if I can work a little bit, I'm going to work a little bit. But if I take off, then I'll just book off. And I said to my team, like, you need to trust me that I will not overwork and I will make sure that I'm rested. Like 100%, please trust me because like I would never ever jeopardize that. Right. I would never want to jeopardize, being in a slam or being super tired because I work too much or something. But my team is really good and they do trust me. And I did work quite a bit this week, but again, like it totally took my mind off of curling. Right. And I love my job and my class is amazing. If it was a little bit more stressful at work, I don't think I would have worked so much.
Right.
But today was amazing. I worked this morning and there's a big hockey tournament in town. So I only had half a class.
Oh, okay.
So we actually had a very leisure morning.
Nice.
And then we had a Remembrance Day service. So it was a really good morning. I went home and I relaxed for about an hour and a half before we curled and it was a great day. We got a win? How can I ask anymore?
Well, it was funny because when we were trying to put this podcast together, I've been doing a bunch this week. And so I was just trying to look at everyone's schedule, find their like one game day. And then if their one game was like 3 or 7, try and do the podcast in the morning. If their one game was like 8 or 11:30, do it in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And you were just like, well, I'm actually working in the morning. And I was like, what the hell? Like
I worked like all day Monday. I worked because we weren't curling.
Yeah.
Tuesday I worked till like just before practice. So we practiced, I think, at 2. So I got off work at like 1. And then Wednesday morning I worked. We played at 3. And then Thursday I was planning on working all day, but I thought I'm not going to push it. And I don't want my team to like murder me. So I only worked the morning there. So I took the afternoon off and napped. And then this morning I worked half day. And my class is awesome. They're super pumping. Like they pump me up and they're like,
they're
I
just
saw you
so
on TV.
happy. Yeah.
And they're grade 5 too.
Of course.
They're always super excited.
You're a celebrity to them.
I heard you on the
TV.
radio. I heard you, or I saw you on TV. Like it's cool. And my school, like the staff members, I have great friends there. And, I go to work and I'm like, our school is a really awesome community of teachers. And we're honestly known as one of the best schools in Thunder Bay. And I think it's because we have such great relationships as teachers that when we go, we have fun there. So wouldn't you want to go to work and have fun? Like you're there, 8
I'm
hours
a teacher
a day.
too. I love it.
Yeah. So you go to work and you have fun. So if I went to work and I didn't like the teachers I worked with, I think it would be harder to go.
Right.
But
so, you like it. So who cares?
I like it. And my class is awesome. So I can't complain.
So just a couple more questions. Has there ever been pushback from the team? Because you've obviously made this choice that you're only going to play 5-ish spiels a year. Has there ever been pushback from the team? Like, hey, I would like to play a little more. I would like to do a little more.
I think like maybe years ago, I could tell that they probably wanted to play a little bit more. And there was a year that they did go to a spiel without me. So they just got a different skip to play. So it was like one more, bond spiel added on. But I think just like since Kendra's joined, like in the last 4 years, I think they've been very respectful of me working and knowing that I want to work. And, as a teacher, we don't have vacation days. So
we do, but we don't get to pick them.
We don't get to pick them. So, it's a little bit of like, that's my paycheck, which I'm willing to give it up for curling too, because it's not that big of a deal. But, I couldn't do as much as like, say, those top teams are doing, because that'd be a lot of my wage. And I don't think it'd be right to do that to my class, like, to be away that much. So I don't think I could actually do that. I'd probably have to take a leave of absence from my job. But so, you know what, like in the last 4 years, I think it's a known thing that we're doing our 5 spiels. And if there's any times that we can ask for a later draw so I can work that day, then that's what we usually do. And everyone's been really good about that.
So that's never come up, and that's never been an issue.
No, I think
that's good.
like years ago, I think it was not an issue, but it has come up. And I just say, this is what I can do. And
if you don't like it, hit the road, Jack.
And then like last year we played the pre-trials. So that's a full week off. And then we played the trials, which is a full week off. Like we didn't make it to the Scotties, but I'd be willing to, go to the Scotties, of course. And that's over a week off. So, that's a large chunk of time in the teaching world to be off, away from your students and having a supply teacher come to your classroom.
Especially in elementary where you have the same kids all year. It's not a semester, kind of thing. Yeah. I feel all that. That's why I'm still a substitute. And I say that to people. They're like, oh, well, your curling only goes till February and whatever. But I'm like, but I'd be missing so much time. It's tough. And so tell me now, you've touched on it a little, but I want to hear more specifically, because your team is really good for, what people would say is a lesser schedule and whatever. Yeah. So what are some of the things you talked about practice, but what are some other things that you do to try to bridge that gap between the Homans and the Joneses and the Hasselborgs and, those teams of the world? What are things that you're doing that you think helps get you a little closer to them?
Well, this year especially, I think now that it's changed to the 5 rock rule, like I try to watch a lot of curling. Not necessarily the men's games as much, but definitely like Team Jones and Holman and watch their strategy. And I think that's really important. Where I don't think I really did that. Like I've watched their games or like partially some of their games, like ends on YouTube to kind of see how they're playing it. So then I can kind of figure out the 5 rock rule and things like that. But like we have really structured practices. Like we don't just go out there and throw rocks. Like every single rock has purpose to it. And Rick is very adamant on this. He'll love that I'm saying this, but he's very adamant on us. Like if we come out to practice and we're talking about, my daughter did this, or, my son's doing this, or at work, like he's very, very strict about that. He's like, we're there to curl. You're not there to socialize. And so he's very strict with that, which I think is important because we're out there to have a meaningful practice. So we definitely do that. And I think like the social aspect, to have a team that likes each other is really important. And we have fun together. And, even though Kendra lives in Sudbury, we try to always keep connected to each other. So I think that's really important.
And so what are some things so you talk a little bit about Rick, and obviously he's super valuable to you guys and national coach and all those kinds of things. What are some other things that he works with you on to kind of, again, help you sort of, so it's that non-social thing, like when we're practicing, we're here to do business. What are some other things that you guys work with him on to, again, kind of bridge that gap?
Oh, like the big thing is strategy with him.
Yeah.
Like he talks us through a lot of strategy scenarios, and Rick and Lorraine are always sending out, like texting us, like they'll take a picture of, rings, and they'll be like scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, which scenario you like and why. And then, so we have to send it back. Like we have a deadline. Okay. You have to send it back. You have to explain every scenario and which one you like. And so always doing like scenarios and like strategy talk with them and those type of things with Rick and Lorraine. But they're very much a curling family, and they've done it for so many years that they're so knowledgeable about everything, not just strategy. It'll be about the mental aspect, about the social aspect of curling, about, just the volunteer time, like what we need to do outside of curling to, thank the city of Thunder Bay, or thank the curling club, or just little things like that. Like Rick always teaches us about, and you forget about that. Like the curling club does so much for us that, we forget about those little things we should be doing, like giving back. So, he brings so much to our team with strategy and the mental aspect of it all, and just technical. He's amazing technical. But he also brings those little things that I was talking about too. Nice.
Last question. We've touched on it a bit, but we haven't fully talked about it. Is it weird that you play with Lorraine's daughter after all these,
really?
After all these, you played with her, and then I assume Sarah was younger,
she was young,
decently young when you first started playing with Lorraine. Like, how does that even come about? And is that something
have to talk about Sarah? She's going to love this. Jeez.
I know. Well, no. I know. She gave me some money to talk about it. No, I'm just
probably.
kidding.
She probably did. No. Well, I remember in juniors, so Ashley and Sarah played together in juniors, right? So then when Lorraine left our team, when she retired, Ashley joined our team. And I could see the little look in Sarah's eye. She wanted to be on the team so badly.
Was Sarah still in junior?
She was younger. Gotcha. She's a couple years younger. But I could see it. And I could see Lorraine trying to hook up too, slowly and so the one year that we made to the Scotties, I think Sarah was still in juniors, but we could take her as a fifth. And I could see Lorraine just just trying to sneak in the Sarah aspect, to get on our team. And it was funny because we were all talking about it after. We're like, oh yeah, Lorraine was just, she basically retired to get Ashley on the team, but then to slowly get Sarah on the team. And it's kind of funny because it worked, but it's not weird at all, but they're so similar in so many ways. They're very, very similar.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Krista. This is the end of the episode, the chance to thank your sponsors, plug your social media, do whatever, get it out there to all the people listening to this here show.
Oh goodness, all of our sponsors, you put me on the spot.
Well, I know, it's so hard. I interviewed Jason Gunlickson, and he was luckily wearing his team off ice jacket.
Yeah.
So he was just lit, oh yeah, those guys and those guys. And
Well, Wildeboer Delis is our main sponsor, and they've been on our team for a few years, and they're really good help to our team. Locally, we have McCartney Dental. Give me my straighter teeth now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, we have.
That was was that part of the deal?
Well, I switched to them because they were part of our team, obviously, but they did Invisalign. I didn't really want braces, so they did Invisalign for me. So that was
the
awesome.
Adult braces is not. It's not the hottest look for 2018.
No.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I mean, Red Zone. Ashley's husband owns Red Zone. We work out there, and my dad's company, Sharp Mechanical. Who else do we have? Oh my goodness, I'm blanking now. Well, Hardline.
Yeah.
Kendra's dad's law firm, he's attorney. Who else? RBC,
for all the legal troubles you get into,
in Sudbury, that is. Freshie, of course.
Oh,
Did you go to Freshie?
Well, I can't leave. It's been so hard. I do like, but I go to Freshie a lot in Vancouver.
You should tell Sarah to deliver it to you then.
Oh,
Freshie.
If she would deliver it to me, then I would gladly have it. Hell yeah. Is it her husband or it's Ashley's?
No, it's actually Rick and Lorraine's, but it's Adam, their son, who's like running it.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, I hope I didn't miss anyone, but
if you did, whatever. They're not important. No, I'm just kidding. All right. And Team McCarville, I think, on
Kendra
Twitter.
does that. I think
you're at Team McCarville. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this, Krista. And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. As we always say, this podcast brought to you by CurlingZone, Dynasty Curling, Hardline Curling. I also would like to thank my artwork designer, Kody Audette. I would like to thank my theme song writer, Graham Wright from Tokyo Police Club. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. If you like the show, rate and review it on iTunes. That helps us move up the iTunes charts. Tell your friends. That's the big thing. I say it every week, but I want you to keep doing it. Tell your friends about this podcast. If you like it, tell people. That's the way that the word is going to get out. Curling, we're a small community. Let's get the word out. Let's get it going. I always say next week, but I mean next 2 weeks. We're doing these episodes 2 weeks apart now. So 2 weeks from now, my guest will be Mike McEwen. We sat down for a chat in Penticton when we were both there playing in the men's spiel there. And Mike was extremely candid about everything that went on with his team. Finally moving on to play with Reed Carruthers this season. We ran the whole gamut and Mike was super candid, super engaging, very open, and just a fantastic episode. I know you guys are going to love it. So come on back next week. Follow us at Stones Draw Pod. You can follow me at Cullen the Curler. Tell your friends and get excited for Mike McEwen. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.